Hey guys, enjoy these new 20 stories. We hope you enjoy them. Let us know your thoughts. And as always, most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button too. It's free and does so much for us. We're forever grateful. Now to the stories.
Honestly, I wasn't really looking for anything serious when I matched with this girl. Her name was Maya. She seemed sweet, normal, and nothing about her profile screamed drama or trouble. We started talking, and after a couple of dates, things were easy. No pressure, just hanging out, grabbing food, watching movies at her place. It felt chill, like I might actually like this. Then one day, Maya said she wanted me to meet her family. At first, I thought cool. Meeting the family is a big step, but whatever, I'm down. I didn't expect it to turn into the nightmare it did. Her family lived in this old house on the edge of town, a place with a big porch, creaky floors, and a weird vibe I couldn't put my finger on at first. They were all there when I showed up: her mom, dad, two brothers, and this aunt who wouldn't stop staring at me like I was a walking dollar sign. The first dinner was pretty normal on the surface, but it felt like they weren't just getting to know me, they were sizing me up. Right from that night, they started acting like I wasn't just some guy Maya was dating, but someone already locked into their family business. It was subtle at first, little comments about when you move in or which room will be yours. I laughed it off, thinking maybe they were just excited, but it wasn't just excitement, it was pressure, the kind that squeezes the air out of you. After that dinner, things escalated fast. Every weekend, I was expected to be there, helping out with stuff around the house or going on errands with Maya's parents. They asked about my job and how much money I made, not like a casual question, but like they were already planning how to divide it up. Maya didn't really say much about it. She just smiled and looked at me like everything was normal. It wasn't. One time, her brother pulled me aside and talked about how they could use some help with rent because things were tight. I was kind of shocked. I hadn't signed up to financially support some family I barely knew. It felt like I was being roped into this mess without a say. Then Maya started dropping hints about moving in together. She said it would make things easier. No big deal, she said. But the thing was, it wasn't about us. It was about her family's expectations. I started getting texts from her mom asking about my schedule, what days I'd be free to come over and help with repairs if I could handle some bills. Every time I tried to bring it up with Maya, she made it sound like I was overthinking things. Like I really cared about her, I'd just go along with it. But the truth was, I was drowning. It felt like they wanted me to lose myself in their world, their plans, their money problems, and they didn't even ask if I wanted to. One weekend, they sat me down for what they called a family meeting. It felt like some kind of intervention, but instead of helping me, they laid out their entire future: weddings, kids, holidays, all like it was already set in stone. I was supposed to agree to be part of this pre made family blueprint, no questions asked. I looked around the room and saw how serious they were. Maya was quiet, just watching me. I didn't know what to say. I felt like a guest in my own life, pushed into a story that wasn't mine. The pressure wasn't just annoying, it was suffocating. I started avoiding them. I stopped answering texts and calls from her family. Maya got upset, told me I was being selfish and not committed enough. But honestly, it wasn't about commitment. It was about feeling trapped. Like I was supposed to give up my independence and bankroll a whole family just because I was dating one person. One night, after a fight that left me feeling more alone than ever, I walked away. I told Maya I needed space, that this wasn't what I signed up for. She looked hurt, but honestly, I think even she knew it was too much. The family pressure had taken over everything. Looking back, I'm still kind of stunned at how fast things got out of hand. One minute, I'm dating a girl who seems chill, the next, I'm being expected to move in, help with bills, plan weddings, all without really having a say. It wasn't just the pressure from Maya. It was her whole family acting like I belonged to them already, like I was just a wallet waiting to be opened. I don't know what happened to Maya after I left. Maybe they're still pushing some other guy into the same trap. I'm just glad I got when I did. It's wild how something that starts out normal can turn into a trap you don't even see coming. Now, whenever I think about me and the family early on, I get this weird feeling. Like it could all go south in a blink if you're not careful. I didn't expect dating to feel like joining a takeover, but that's exactly what it was with Maya and her family. So yeah, that's my story. Not some horror movie with monsters or ghosts, but a real life kind of horror, where the people who are supposed to be welcoming you in are actually trying to take over everything you have. You know how sometimes you get that weird gut feeling about someone online to just ignore it because you want to believe things will be okay? Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me with this guy named Tex. At first, everything seemed pretty normal, even kind of exciting, but then it turned into this whole nightmare that I still can't wrap my head around. So I matched with Dex on Tinder one night when I was just scrolling through because I was bored and honestly not expecting much. His profile was interesting. He said he worked overseas, something about international trade or shipping, and he had these cool photos of beaches and cities that looked exotic. I figured, okay, maybe this guy actually has a life somewhere far away from here. It was a nice change from the usual just moved here or work in IT types that usually pop up. We started messaging back and forth, and he was pretty charming. Not pushy or overly flirty, just casual and easy to talk to. He told me about the places he'd been, the crazy hours he worked, and how being overseas was lonely sometimes. We shared some jokes, talked about music and movies, and he asked about my day. It felt real. For a few weeks, it was this fun, low pressure thing where I actually looked forward to getting his messages. Then things got weird. One night, out of nowhere, he told me he was stuck at customs in some foreign country. He said there was a problem with his paperwork and that he couldn't leave the airport or move forward until it got sorted out. I remember how anxious he sounded in his messages, like he was freaking out but trying to stay calm. He said he didn't have access to his wallet or phone plan, and that if I could just wire in some money, he could pay some kind of fee or bribe to get out of the mess. He promised he'd pay me back as soon as he was back on his feet. I sat there staring at my phone, heart racing. It didn't make sense. Why was he texting me from customs if his phone plan didn't work? Why didn't he call? And if he really worked overseas, why was he using Tinder on his phone at all? But I wanted to trust him. I figured maybe this was just one of those super unlucky things that happen to people who travel a lot. I told myself it was okay, I'd help him out. I sent the money. It wasn't a ton, but it felt like a lot at the time. He thanked me profusely and said he was trying to stay strong. He sent a few photos of what looked like an airport, blurry shots of seats and windows at night. It seemed real enough. But the messages kept coming and the story kept changing. Now the problem wasn't just customs. It was the embassy, the police, some lawyer he had to pay. He kept asking for more money. Each time I felt worse and worse about it, but I didn't want to just leave him hanging. I kept hoping this would end soon, that he'd finally get out and we'd meet in person. Then one day I decided to Google his name. Just a random search to see if I could find any proof he was who he said he was. What I found didn't add up at all. There was a Dex in my own town who matched the photos. Same face, same hair. But this guy worked at a small convenience store, not some fancy overseas shipping company. His social media was totally local, nothing exotic or international about it. No pictures of fancy trips or anything that matched what Dex had told me. I couldn't believe it. I kept digging, and I found out that the Dex I'd been talking to had never left town. The airport photos were probably taken at a local bus station or something. The whole story was a complete lie. I tried calling the number he gave me. It went straight to voicemail. When I messaged him asking to explain, I got nothing back. I felt sick. It was like this horrible mix of embarrassment and anger. I'd been duped by someone pretending to be this cool, worldly guy just to get money from me. It wasn't just that he lied, it was the way he manipulated me into feeling responsible, like I owed him something because of his emergency. It was disgusting. Looking back, I realized there were signs I ignored. The inconsistent stories, the sudden urgent requests for cash, the way he avoided video calls or meeting up in person. But I was caught up in the fantasy of someone interesting, someone different from the usual boring dating pool. I wanted to believe in Dex. After I stopped responding, I blocked the number and deleted his profile from my phone. But the whole thing left this weird dark cloud over me. It wasn't just the money I lost. It was the way I felt used, like I was a target in some scam I never even saw coming. Sometimes I still wonder how many other people he's done this to. How many others believe the story of the guy stuck overseas, desperate for help? It's crazy how someone can build an entire fake life just to trick someone else. I haven't been back on Tinder since. It's like every time I think about trying again, I remember Dex and how easily I fell into his trap. It's not just about dating anymore. It's about trust. And once that's broken like this, it's hard to put back together. If someone told me a few months ago that a couple of swipes on Tinder would turn into one of the most uncomfortable, twisted situations of my life, I probably would have laughed. I mean, everyone hears about bad dates or weird people, but I never thought it'd get to the point where I'd literally question my sanity because of some random girl I met on an app. But yeah, here we are. So I matched with Selena on a Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep. It was one of those nights where you're just laying there, scrolling mindlessly, not even paying that much attention. Her profile wasn't anything wild. A few cute selfies, some with her dog, one where she was at the beach. She had this laid back vibe, like she wasn't trying super hard to impress anyone, which honestly made her stand out. We started chatting, and I'll be real, she was actually cool. Like, easy to talk to, kind of funny, and didn't make things weird like some people do right away. After a few days of talking, we set up a date. Just a casual thing, coffee and a walk. Nothing fancy, and it was fine. She looked just like her pictures, which is always a good sign. She dressed simple, had good energy, wasn't awkward. We talked about random stuff, laughed a bit, and it all felt natural. So we kept seeing each other after that. Second date, third date, and so on. All super chill. Sometimes we grab food, sometimes we just hang out at the park or watch movies. Nothing ever felt forced or rushed. About a month in, I started thinking that maybe this was actually going somewhere. She wasn't like the other people I dated who either came on too strong or played weird games. Selena was just normal, or so I thought. One night, after we hung out at my place, she got really quiet before she left. I thought maybe something was bothering her, but she didn't say anything. Then the next morning, she sent me this long text saying she had something important to tell me. I remember reading it and thinking, here we go, maybe she's catching feelings faster than I am, or maybe there's some drama I'm not ready for. But it wasn't even close to what was coming. She told me she was pregnant. I stared at my phone for like 5 minutes, reading it over and over. I almost dropped it. We hadn't been seeing each other that long, and we'd been careful every time. My mind was racing. I didn't know what to say. She followed up right after, saying she didn't want to freak me out, but she thought I deserved to know right away. I was completely frozen. My stomach was twisted. I started thinking about every scenario possible, wondering how the hell this happened. She said she wanted us to work through it together, that she wasn't expecting me to run or anything, but she wanted us to talk about where we stood. I told her we needed to meet in person to talk it through. We met up that evening, and she was calm. Too calm, honestly. She started talking about how we could figure things out as a team. She mentioned how maybe it was fate, how she always wanted to be a mom one day, and how she thought I'd make a great dad. She even pulled out a notebook where she had written down some baby names she liked. I just sat there listening, completely numb. That's when the pressure started. She kept bringing up how important it was for me to meet her parents soon, how we needed to plan ahead, start saving, maybe even look for a place together. Every conversation after that kept circling back to the pregnancy. She'd send me baby name ideas out of nowhere, talk about future doctor appointments, even text me late at night saying the baby was kicking, which made no sense because it was way too early for that. I started feeling trapped. My head was spinning constantly. I wasn't even sure what I felt anymore. Some nights I'd lie awake just staring at the ceiling, feeling like my life was spiraling out of my control. My friends started noticing I wasn't myself. I barely talked to anyone about it because I was embarrassed, honestly. I thought people would judge me for getting into something like this so fast. But deep down, something felt off. She never once mentioned going to the doctor. No pictures, no appointments, no ultrasounds. Nothing. Every time I asked, she'd say she didn't want to overwhelm me or that she'd show me when the time was right. After a while, her story started getting messier. Timelines didn't match up. Symptoms she mentioned didn't make sense. I started Googling stuff like crazy, comparing what she was saying to what should have been happening. It ate at me until one day I couldn't take anymore. I told her I needed to see proof. I needed something real because this wasn't adding up. At first, she acted super offended, like I didn't trust her, like I was a bad guy. She got emotional, said I was stressing her out, and that it wasn't good for the baby, but I stood my ground. I told her flat out, no proof, no conversation. A few days went by. I didn't hear from her. And she finally texted me saying she was coming clean. She admitted she was never pregnant. She said she lied because she didn't want to lose me. She thought that if I believed we were having a baby together, I wouldn't leave, that I'd feel like I had to stay committed. She tried to justify it like it was out of love or fear, but I couldn't even process what I was reading. It was like my brain just short-circuited. I blocked her that night. I didn't respond. I just sat there, staring at my phone, realizing how close I came to getting completely trapped in this insane lie. It wasn't even about heartbreak at that point. It was like this weird mix of anger, relief, and straight up disgust. I deleted Tinder after that. Haven't been back on it since. The whole thing left me paranoid as hell. I still wonder sometimes how many people she's done that to before me. And every time someone jokes about crazy Tinder stories, I just stay quiet because nothing comes close to what happened with Selena. It all started like most Tinder dates do. Bored one night, scrolling for no reason. I wasn't even trying to find anyone serious, just something to break up the week. Swipe left, swipe right, half paying attention. Then I came across Adam's profile. He had one of those friendly faces, kind of awkward, but in a cute way. Nothing over the top. His bio was simple, said he liked hiking, coffee shops, and was looking for something real. Sounded harmless enough. We matched pretty quick and started talking that same night. He was really easy to chat with. Not too pushy, not trying too hard. Just normal, which was honestly rare. We talked about movies, random food cravings, weekend plans. After a few days, he asked if I wanted to meet up for coffee. I figured why not. We met at this little coffee shop downtown. The place was nice, kind of quiet, lots of plants everywhere. When I got there, I spotted him right away. He looked just like his pictures, which was a relief. Same short, dark hair, kind of messy but intentional, glasses, a bit of stubble. He stood up when I walked over, smiled like he'd been waiting forever, and pulled out my chair for me. Right off the bat, he seemed a little shy in person, but sweet. The date was fine. Nothing crazy, but no weird vibes either. We talked for a couple hours, and by the end of it, I actually felt pretty good about it. We made plans to see each other again. Over the next few weeks, we went on a few more dates. We did dinner, went to an arcade, even did a little mini golf night. He was always a little awkward in person, like he didn't totally know what to do with his hands, but it was kind of endearing. He'd send me random memes during the day, check in to see how my day was going, little things like that. It felt like it was heading in a good direction. But then a few things started to feel off. Nothing huge, just small things I kept brushing off at first. The first thing I noticed was how he always avoided taking pictures together. Every time I'd pull out my phone, he'd laugh it off and say he looked terrible that day, or the lighting was bad, or he didn't like photos. I didn't push it. Some people just hate cameras. Then there was a weird moment when he introduced himself to the hostess at a restaurant as Matt. I thought I misheard him at first, but when I asked about it later, he brushed it off like I was imagining things. Said I probably heard someone else's name nearby. Another time, I accidentally called him Adam while we were out, and he kind of hesitated before answering, like it took him a second to process it. That one stuck with me. But again, I convinced myself I was overthinking it. Everything finally started to unravel one weekend when we ran into one of his friends at a bookstore. His friend walked up, gave him a confused look, and asked what he was doing there. The way his friend looked at me and then back at him was weird. Super awkward, like he didn't know who I was or why I was there. Adam, or whoever he was, laughed off quickly and rushed us out of the store before I could really process what just happened. That night, my brain wouldn't stop going in circles. I knew something was off, but I couldn't figure out what. I finally did what I probably should have done earlier. I started digging. I went back through our Tinder messages. Nothing weird there. But then I noticed something strange on his Instagram. The account he gave me didn't have many followers, barely any posts, and no tagged photos. Just a bunch of random nature shots and motivational quotes. It felt oddly clean, like it was made to look real but didn't actually show anything personal. I started searching his name online, hoping to find something that could give me an answer. After way too much digging, I stumbled across another Instagram. Same last name, same city, but this one looked real. Tons of photos, tagged friends, family pictures, birthdays, and in those photos was a guy who looked exactly like Adam. Only his name was Matt. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a guy who just used a different name on Tinder for privacy or whatever. This was a different person. The more I looked, the more I realized the guy I had been seeing wasn't Adam at all. It was Matt, his twin brother. I found Adam's real Instagram, too. Completely normal guy, very active online, clearly not the person I've been dating, and he had no idea who I was. I was freaking out at this point. My mind went to some crazy places. Why would his twin pretend to be him? What was the point? Was this some joke? A scam? I couldn't make sense of any of it. I finally decided to confront him. I texted him, asked to meet up. He agreed. We met at a park and I came straight out with it. No more pretending. I told him I knew he wasn't Adam, that I found his real Instagram, that I knew he was Matt. He froze. His face went pale, and for the first time since I met him, he had nothing to say. After a long pause, he finally admitted it. He said he hacked into Adam's Tinder because Adam always got more matches than him. He said he was sick of living in his twin's shadow, always being second best. He figured if he used Adam's profile, he could finally get the kind of dates he thought he deserved. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All those dates, all the conversations, the jokes, everything we shared, it was all built on a lie. He wasn't just pretending to be someone else. He was pretending to be his own brother. I left right after that. Blocked his number, unmatched, deleted everything. The whole thing made my skin crawl. Every now and then, I still think about it and wonder how many other people he pulled this on before me. I wasn't even planning to get serious with anyone, honestly. I just wanted to hang out, maybe find someone cool to chill with, no pressure or anything. Then I met Olga. At first, she seemed really sweet, not in that over-the-top way, just normal, funny, easy to talk to. We matched on Tinder, and our first couple of dates were pretty chill. Nothing wild, just grabbing food, walking around the park, talking about random stuff. She wasn't the type to rush things or push for anything serious, or so I thought. After a few weeks, Olga surprised me by inviting me to meet her family. That's when things started to get weird. Usually, meeting the family is a big step, but with Olga, it felt like the whole thing was happening all at once, like being thrown into the deep end. The first time I went over to her place, her parents and siblings were there, and they didn't just say hi and ask normal questions. They acted like I was already their boyfriend or something. Her mom started talking about what part of the house I'd stay in, like it was already decided I'd be living there soon. Her dad casually brought up jobs in the area and asked if I was ready to settle down. It was like they were writing the script and I was supposed to follow it. I remember sitting there at the dinner table, feeling this pressure creeping in. Olga was smiling but kind of quiet, like she was watching to see how I'd react. Her family kept going on about weddings, kids moving in together, stuff I hadn't even thought about yet. I felt like I was on some hidden camera show, but there was no punchline, no escape. After that night, things escalated fast. Every time I saw Olga, her family was more involved. They started inviting me over every weekend, and instead of just hanging out, they would pull me aside and talk about finances. They wanted to know how much money I made, if I could help out with bills, if I was thinking about getting a house. It wasn't like they were curious, it was more like an expectation. I remember one Sunday, Olga's brother casually asked me if I could cover a chunk of their rent since he was having money problems. Olga just nodded like it was no big deal. I felt stuck. Olga acted normal with me, but whenever her family was around, I was this walking wallet or future provider. It was like I had no choice but to go along with it if I wanted to keep her in my life. One night, I showed up to Olga's and she told me they'd planned a family meeting. I thought maybe it was a casual get-together, but it turned out to be this full-on sit-down where they laid out plans for the future. A future that didn't include me having a say. They talked about where we'd live, which wedding venue would be best, even started throwing around baby names. It was nuts. Olga barely said anything during all this. She just smiled, watching me squirm. I tried to bring it up with her later, how I felt overwhelmed and pushed, but she brushed it off. She said her family was just excited, that they liked me, that I should be happy. But I wasn't happy. I was feeling trapped, like I'd been pulled into a family drama I didn't sign up for. It wasn't just the pressure to commit. It was the financial stuff that got to me the most. I wasn't rich or anything close. I was working a regular job, saving up, and suddenly I was supposed to support a whole family. Things got worse when they started dropping hints about me moving in like I was already living there. Olga's place was small, and she kept telling me how much easier it would be if I just moved in, split bills, and helped around the house. But it wasn't just about convenience. It was like they expected me to give up my own space and independence right away. I started avoiding her family. I made excuses to skip their weekend hangouts, stopped answering their texts about plans or money. Olga got annoyed. She said I was being selfish, that if I loved her, I'd step up. It felt like a trap. If I didn't go along with the whole family thing, I was the bad guy. And if I did, I was giving up too much too soon. One night, after a fight where she accused me of not caring, I left. I couldn't stay there anymore. The idea of being part of that family was suffocating. It was like they were trying to swallow me whole, my time, my money, my freedom. Olga was sweet on the surface, but when I looked closer, I realized she was kind of lost in the whole thing too, like she was just following her family script and didn't see how messed up it was. I still think about how quickly everything spiraled. One minute it was just dating someone new, the next it was a full-on family takeover. I never signed up to be part of some pre-planned life that didn't even include me in the decisions. The worst part was realizing how easy it was for them to pull me in, how they made me feel like the odd one out for wanting to have boundaries. I cut contact with Olga eventually. It sucked because I liked her at first, but the family pressure was too much. I learned that sometimes the biggest red flags aren't obvious at first. They sneak in with smiles and invitations to dinner. Now, whenever someone talks about meeting the family, I get this instant headache. It's like a warning bell in my head, reminding me of that strange, overwhelming experience. I'm not sure what happened to Olga after that, but I'm pretty sure I dodged a bullet. Honestly, dating shouldn't feel like you're signing up for a whole other life you didn't want. I guess that's the scary part. Sometimes a horror story isn't about monsters or crazy people. It's about how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's world without even realizing it. I still don't know why I agreed to that date. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I just thought it was gonna be one of those weird stories you laugh about later. But trust me, it wasn't funny when it was happening. I matched with Ashley on Tinder on a random Wednesday night. Her profile was a little weird, not gonna lie. Most of her pictures were gym selfies, not like casual ones either. She was flexing in most of them. One was her holding a protein shake. Another one was her doing some insane squat with too much weight on the bar. Her bio said something like, "Fitness is life, no days off. Don't waste my time if you're lazy." That should be my first clue. We started talking and she was intense, but I figured that was just her being super into fitness. She wasn't mean or anything. She actually had a decent sense of humor, so I figured I'd give it a shot. I suggested we meet up for dinner and she agreed, but only if we went somewhere nice because she said she deserved to be treated well. Fair enough. I made a reservation at this fancy restaurant downtown. You know, the kind of place where the menu has like 4 things on it. The lighting is all dim, and the waiter acts like he's doing you a favor just by letting you sit down. I even wore a suit jacket, which I almost never do, just to not feel underdressed. The reservation was for 8. I got there 5 minutes early, sitting at the table, kind of nervous but mostly curious. Then at 8:15 she walked in. I swear, every single person in the restaurant turned to look at her. She was wearing a bright neon pink tracksuit, like full-on zip-up hoodie, matching pants, and running shoes. She had her hair tied up in a messy bun and a giant water bottle in her hand. The hostess looked just as confused as I was, but she led her to my table. Ashley sat down like everything was completely normal. I tried not to look too surprised, but my brain was screaming. This was a 5-star restaurant, and she looked like she was about to run laps around the building. Before I could even say anything, she told me straight out that she only wears comfortable clothes, and she didn't believe in dressing up for people. Then she pulled out her smartwatch and tapped something on it like she was checking her heart rate. I tried to play it cool. I mean, it's just clothes, right? Whatever. The waiter came by and handed her a menu, and she kind of glanced at it but didn't really seem interested. I ordered a steak. She ordered nothing. She said she had already eaten her macros for the day and didn't want to mess up her calorie count. Instead, she pulled out a protein bar from her pocket and started eating it right there at the table. The waiter just stood there for a second like he didn't know if he should say something, but he walked away without a word. I was just sitting there thinking this is gonna be one weird night. While I ate, she talked about her gym routine. That means she talked nonstop. Every detail. What time she wakes up, how many reps she does for each workout, her supplements, her resting heart rate, her VO2 max, whatever that means. She even pulled up her fitness app to show me graphs. I nodded along, pretending I understood any of it. She barely asked me anything about myself. The entire conversation was like I was listening to a podcast called Ashley's Life. At one point, she looked at her watch again and made this face like she just remembered something. She said she didn't finish her cardio of the gym earlier because she was running late and her trainer would be disappointed if she didn't get her steps in. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Before I knew it, she stood up from the table, zipped up her hoodie, and started jogging around the restaurant. Not like a little lap either. She was literally jogging in circles, weaving between tables, running past waiters carrying plates of food. People were staring. The waiter who took our order just froze and watched her go by. One guy almost dropped a glass of wine because he was trying to get out of her way. I sat there completely embarrassed while she ran laps around the dining room. Every time she passed by our table, she would give me a thumbs up like she was proud of herself. Her water bottle was sloshing around in her hand. One of the managers came over to me, super polite but clearly annoyed, and asked if I could get my date to stop running because she was disturbing the other guests. I had no idea what to even say. After like 15 minutes of her little indoor marathon, she finally sat back down, breathing heavy but looking satisfied. She wiped sweat off her forehead with her sleeve and started telling me how good it felt to finish her cardio. I could barely even look at her at this point. People around us were still whispering and giving us weird looks. The worst part, she acted like nothing unusual had happened. She picked up her protein bar like she didn't just turn the restaurant into her personal treadmill. The waiter came back with my check and placed it down without making eye contact. I paid as fast as I could, desperate to get out of there. As we were leaving, she mentioned wanting to schedule our second date, maybe something more active like hiking or a spin class. I mumbled something about being busy and walked her to her car. She gave me this overly enthusiastic goodbye, still breathing a little heavy from her restaurant workout. I'd never texted her again. She tried messaging me a couple of times, saying how much fun she had and how refreshing it was to be with someone who didn't judge her lifestyle. But I just couldn't do it. The image of her running around in that neon tracksuit while everyone stared is burned into my brain forever. That was easily one of the strangest dates in my life. Every time I drive past that restaurant now, I feel secondhand embarrassment all over again. It started like most of my dates do. I wasn't even trying that hard with Tinder anymore. I would swipe while watching TV, half paying attention, matching with people just out of habit. That's when Dom popped up. His profile wasn't anything special, but something about him seemed different. He had this goofy grin, messy brown hair, and a bunch of random photos that made him look kind of harmless. One was him holding a giant pretzel at a fair. Another was him sitting on a beach chair with sunglasses that looked too big for his face. His bio just said something about loving spontaneous adventures and bad reality shows. We matched, started chatting, and honestly, it was kind of refreshing. He didn't try too hard to impress me. The conversation flowed naturally, lots of joking around. After a couple of days, he asked if I wanted to meet up. I figured why not. He seemed normal enough, and it had been a while since I'd been on an actual date. We met at this little diner not far from my apartment. It was casual, not too crowded, the kind of place where you can actually hear the person across from you. When he showed up, he looked pretty much like his pictures, maybe a bit taller. He had this nervous energy about him, fidgeting with his phone case, tapping his fingers on the table. I thought maybe it was just first date jitters. We ordered food, talked about work, school, random stuff. It was going fine. But then, halfway through the meal, he suddenly went pale. I barely had time to react before he leaned over and threw up right onto my lap. It was disgusting. Completely caught me off guard. The waiter rushed over, handed me a bunch of napkins, and Dom just kept apologizing, saying he must have eaten something bad earlier. I tried to play it cool, telling him it was okay even though I was completely grossed out. Accidents happen, right? He seemed genuinely embarrassed, and after he cleaned himself up, he offered to pay for everything and get me an Uber home. I accepted. That was enough for one night. Most people would have probably blocked him after that, but for some reason I didn't. I felt bad for him. He seemed so mortified, and I figured it wasn't fair to judge him for one bad incident. Plus, he texted me later that night apologizing again and thanking me for being so understanding. He seemed sweet about it, so I decided to give him another chance. Our second date was a week later. He suggested we go to an outdoor food market. It was a sunny afternoon, lots of people walking around, food trucks everywhere. Everything started off great. We tried different foods, walked around, joked about which trucks looked the most sketchy. For a while, I actually forgot about the first date disaster. But then, right after we sat down on a bench to eat some tacos, it happened again. Out of nowhere, he gagged, leaned over, and vomited all over my shoes and the ground in front of us. People nearby stared, some even stepped away. I was completely frozen, not sure what to do. He apologized again, saying he probably shouldn't have mixed different foods, blaming his weak stomach. That time I was less forgiving. It was starting to feel weird. Twice in a row. Still, he looked genuinely upset and kept saying how he didn't want me to think he was some kind of freak. I didn't respond much on the ride home. My mind was racing, trying to figure out if this was some weird medical condition or just bad luck. Against my better judgment, I agreed to see him one more time. Part of me wanted to believe it was all just unfortunate timing. He promised me a quiet movie night at his place, no food involved, super low key. I figured there wouldn't be anything that could go wrong. When I got there, his apartment was surprisingly tidy. He had candles lit, some old comedy playing on the TV, and he handed me a glass of water when I walked in. For a while, it was actually kind of nice. We sat close on the couch, watched the movie, talked in between. But then, right in the middle of the scene, I saw him start to fidget again. His breathing changed, and before I could move, he turned toward me and vomited all over my arm and the couch. This time, I jumped up, completely done. My skin was crawling. He just sat there, wiping his mouth, trying to say sorry through heavy breathing. I grabbed my stuff and left without saying much. I blocked his number that night. No more texts. No more chances. A couple of days later, I was telling my friend about the whole situation. She was as grossed out as I was and decided to do some digging. She searched his name online just out of curiosity to see if there was anything weird about him. What she found made my stomach drop. Dom had a YouTube channel. It wasn't under his real name, but his face was all over it. The channel had dozens of videos of him vomiting on different people during dates. Some looked staged, but others, like mine, were clearly real. You could see me sitting there, reacting in shock as he threw up on me at the diner, at the food market, even on his couch. He had hidden cameras set up in his apartment, recording everything. The videos had thousands of views. People in the comments were laughing, calling him creative, saying they loved the reactions he got. I felt sick, not just because of what happened, but because he had planned it all. Every single time, it was on purpose. He wasn't some poor guy with a weak stomach. He was doing it for views, for subscribers, for some twisted kind of online fame. I reported the channel immediately. My friend and I both did. We also went to the police, but they said it would take time to investigate. The worst part was knowing how many other girls had probably gone through the same thing and had no idea they were being filmed. After that, I deleted my Tinder account completely. I couldn't trust anyone after that. Even now, months later, I still check around me when I go on dates. I still worry someone might be recording without me knowing. And every time I see a hidden camera story online, I think about Dom and how close I came to being just another one of his videos. Honestly, I should have known from the start that something was off. The signs were there. I just kind of ignored them. You know how it is when you first match with someone on Tinder. You're not really thinking straight. You get caught up in the texts, the attention, the compliments. It all feels fun at first. That's exactly how it started with Thalila. Her profile wasn't anything crazy, but something about her vibe pulled me in. She had this natural look, not overly done up, and her pictures seemed pretty chill. There were a couple of photos of her at parks, one at a music festival, and one random one of her eating ice cream while laughing. That one kind of got me. It made her seem real. Her bio was short, something about loving deep conversations and sushi nights. I swiped right, not really expecting much, but we matched instantly. We started talking, and it clicked pretty fast. She was easy to talk to, asked a lot of questions, seemed genuinely interested. We stayed up late messaging about all kinds of random stuff. Favorite movies, bad dates we'd both had, our weird childhood habits. It felt like one of those rare connections you get on these apps. After a week or so, we decided to meet up. Nothing fancy, just coffee at a little spot downtown. She looked exactly like her pictures, which is always a relief. She had this calm energy, but there was also something a little intense under the surface. At first, I thought it was just nerves. I didn't overthink it. We hung out a few more times after that. Walks in the park, late night drives, grabbing food together. It was all pretty chill. She was always a bit particular about where we went, though. Always wanted to pick the spot. Always had strong opinions about what was good or bad. I kind of let her take the lead on most things. I didn't mind, honestly. She seemed like she knew what she liked. Then one night she invited me to a dinner party. She said her friend was hosting it, and she wanted me to meet some of the people she was close to. I figured it was a good sign, like maybe she was starting to take this seriously. She said it was going to be a small, intimate thing, just a few close friends, dinner, some drinks. I agreed without thinking too much about it. The night of the party, I showed up at her place and we drove together. She was dressed up more than usual, and she looked good. The way she smiled at me in the car made me feel like I was doing something right. We pulled up to this house in a pretty quiet neighborhood. The place was nice, way nicer than what I expected. Her friend must have had money. When we walked in, everyone was already there. There were maybe 8 or 9 people scattered around the living room and kitchen. They all seemed to know each other really well. Lots of inside jokes, laughing, hugging. I felt a little out of place right away, but I figured that was normal. It always feels weird being the new person. Her friend, a girl named Mia, greeted me but barely said more than hi before pulling Delilah into some long conversation. And that was kind of how the whole night went. Delilah drifted off with her friends almost immediately. They circled around the kitchen island, pouring drinks, laughing at stuff I didn't understand, bringing up stories from trips they took, people I'd never heard of, situations I had no clue about. I tried to join a few times, but every time I spoke, it felt like I was interrupting something I wasn't part of. They'd smile politely, nod, and then go right back to their conversation. After a while, I just stopped trying. I stood there with a drink in my hand, watching them talk like I wasn't even there. Every now and then Della would glance over at me and smile like everything was fine, but she never made any real effort to pull me in or include me. An hour passed, then 2. It got to the point where I was just standing alone most of the time, scrolling through my phone, pretending I was checking something important just so I didn't look completely awkward. The few other guys that were there were clearly part of the friend group, laughing with the girls, talking about things I had no part of. The whole thing started to feel less like I was meeting her friends, and more like I was tagging along on a night where I didn't belong. Like she brought me there just to say she brought someone, but never actually intended for me to be involved. By the 3rd hour, I was done. I quietly slipped out the front door while they were still deep in conversation about some trip they were planning. She didn't even notice me leave. I got in my car and just drove home, feeling weird about the whole night. I wasn't even mad at that point, just kind of confused. About an hour later, my phone started blowing up. Text after text from Delilah. At first, it was her asking where I went. Then she started accusing me of being rude for leaving without saying anything. She said I embarrassed her, that I made her look bad in front of her friends. I tried to explain how isolated I felt, how she didn't make any effort to include me, but she didn't care. She said I was being dramatic, that I should have tried harder, that it wasn't her responsibility to hold my hand the whole night. The more she texted, the more aggressive she got. She started accusing me of being insecure, of ruining the night on purpose. She said if I couldn't handle her friends, that I wasn't mature enough to be with her. That part stuck with me. Like somehow this whole thing was my fault because I didn't force myself into conversations where I clearly wasn't wanted. I didn't respond after that. I left her messages on read and eventually blocked her number. I didn't want to deal with whatever weird mind games she was playing. I deleted Tinder the next day. The whole thing just left a bad taste in my mouth. Even now, sometimes when I'm at a party or gathering, I get this weird knot in my stomach. Like I'm back at the house again, standing by myself, invisible while everyone laughs around me. So, this whole thing started on a random Thursday night. I was sitting on my bed, just aimlessly swiping through Tinder like I always do when I'm bored. You know how it is. You're not really looking for anything serious, just something to kill time. Maybe meet someone cool if you're lucky. That's when I matched with this guy, Thomas. His profile wasn't anything crazy. A few selfies, one of him holding a beer at some backyard party. Another one at the gym flexing a little but not too much. Like he was trying not to seem like one of those cringy gym dudes. He had this messy dark hair, kind of sharp jawline, and his eyes were this weird mix of brown and green, like hazel but darker. His bio just said, "Let's grab drinks and see where it goes." Pretty basic, but honestly, most guys are like that on there. We started talking that night. He was funny, not in a try-hard way, but more like the kind of guy who roasts you, but still charming. We talked about random stuff, music, school, bad dates, dumb movies. After like 2 days of texting nonstop, he asked if I wanted to meet up. I said sure, why not? For our first meetup, we grabbed coffee at this small cafe downtown. It went fine. He was easy to talk to, way better looking in person. We hung out a few more times after that, mostly just getting food, driving around, that kind of thing. Nothing felt weird. He was chill, funny, a bit intense sometimes, but nothing alarming. Then one weekend, he'd asked if I wanted to go with him to a football game. I'm not really into sports, but I figured it could be fun, and he seemed pretty excited about it. He told me he had season tickets, and his usual friend bailed last minute. So I agreed. The game was packed. It was one of those rivalry matches, home team is their biggest enemies. I remember walking into the stadium and feeling the energy immediately. People shouting, chanting, beers spilling, everyone wearing jerseys. Thomas was fully decked out in his team's gear, like he was ready to play himself. I just had a hoodie on and kind of blended into the background. We found our seats and everything was fine for like the first half. Thomas was yelling, jumping up, cursing at the refs, the usual fan stuff. But then after the halftime break, things started to get a little weird. There was this group of guys sitting a few rows in front of us. They were clearly rooting for the away team. They started throwing little jabs, like mocking chants and stuff. At first, Thomas was laughing it off, but I could tell it was getting to him. His jaw clenched a bit, and he started firing back comments, louder and more aggressive each time. I leaned over and kind of told him to chill, like it's not that serious, but he just waved me off. After the away team scored, those guys started celebrating pretty obnoxiously. One of them turned around and made this sarcastic comment directly at Thomas. I don't even know exactly what was said, but it was enough to set him off. Before I knew it, Thomas was out of his seat yelling back, and then one of the away fans stood up too. They were face to face, and it escalated super quick. Punches started flying. Security was trying to push through the crowd, but people were everywhere, some even pulling out their phones to record. I was just frozen, like, what the hell was even happening? It got ugly fast. One of the guys punched Thomas right in the face hard. He stumbled back, but then charged forward again. More punches, some kicks, people shouting, some trying to pull him apart, others hanging on. Finally, security managed to break it up, but not before Thomas was bleeding from his nose and eyebrow, and one of the away fans had a busted lip. Security dragged Thomas out, and I followed completely panicked. They didn't even let him leave on his own. They called for paramedics because he was looking rough. His face was swelling, and there was blood all over his shirt. I was standing there holding his jacket while the paramedics loaded him onto the stretcher, still trying to process what I just saw. I followed the ambulance to the hospital, calling his phone nonstop, but obviously he wasn't answering. When I got there, they had me wait in this gross little waiting room while they treated him. It felt like I was there forever. Eventually, a nurse came out and told me he'd be okay, but needed some stitches and scans to make sure there was no concussion or anything worse. I was relieved, but also starting to feel really freaked out about everything. Like, this was a side of him I hadn't seen at all before. After a couple hours, it let me see him. His face was a mess. Swollen eye, stitches over his eyebrow, nose packed with gauze. But he was awake and trying to act like it wasn't a big deal. Kept making jokes about how he showed those guys who's boss. Except, from where I stood, it looked like he got completely wrecked. He brushed it off like it was just some regular fight, like that kind of thing just happens. I didn't even know what to say. Part of me wanted to just get up and leave right then, but I stayed. Mostly because I felt bad, I guess. After he got discharged, I drove him back to his apartment. The ride was quiet except for him making dumb jokes trying to lighten the mood. I wasn't really laughing. My stomach was turning the whole time. The next few days were weird. He texted me constantly like nothing happened, asking to hang out again. But I couldn't shake how fast he went from normal to violent. Like, yeah, those fans were being jerks, but who jumped straight to throwing punches over that, it wasn't normal. I started to pull back a little, not replying as much, making excuses. But Thomas didn't seem to get it. He kept pushing, sending me these long messages about how he really liked me, how people always misunderstand him, how I shouldn't judge him over one little fight. He even said it made him feel alive, like he loved the adrenaline. That honestly freaked me out more than the fight itself. Eventually, I just stopped responding. Blocked his number, unmatched him on Tinder, everything. But it didn't end there. About a week later, I saw him outside my building. I don't even know how he found where I lived. He was just standing there, leaning against a streetlight like he was waiting. When I saw him, my chest felt like it dropped straight to the ground. I didn't even go out to him. I turned around and walked straight to my friend's place instead. After that night, I never saw him again. But sometimes, even now, I still check over my shoulder walking home, just in case. Okay, so I matched with this girl, Casey, on Tinder. She seemed chill, nothing crazy or too out there, just a normal profile. Smiling in the photos, kind of artsy vibes, loved horror movies, which I'm into too, so I figured why not. We hit it off pretty quickly over text, the usual memes and dumb jokes, nothing heavy. We decided to meet up and do something kind of fun and casual. She suggested the local theme park because it had this old, sort of abandoned feeling roller coaster that was supposed to be super intense. It wasn't one of those giant flashy parks with tons of rides and crowds. More like an old school spot on the edge of town. Kind of run down but with charm. The day was warm but not too hot, perfect for a weird adventure. I met her there, and she was wearing this vintage leather jacket and some ripped jeans, kind of rocker, which wasn't what I pictured but was cool. We started off just wandering around, grabbing some junk food, laughing over dumb stuff, and checking out the small rides. Nothing scary yet. The park had this creepy vibe though, with old signs peeling off, paint chipping everywhere, and this faint smell of burnt popcorn mixed with something weird like old metal. After a while, we got to that roller coaster. It was called The Phantom, and man, it looked straight out of a horror movie set. The wooden tracks creaked even when the cars weren't moving. It had this old gothic theme, with cobwebs, probably fake, and creepy music playing on loop near the entrance. Casey was hyped for it, which I thought was funny because it looked terrifying and also kind of sketchy. The lines were short, maybe 5 people in front of us, so it wasn't a big wait. We got strapped in, and I swear the seat belts felt like they hadn't been checked in years. The car jerked forward, and the ride started slow, crawling through these dark tunnels filled with fake ghosts and flashing lights. Then it dropped suddenly, faster than I expected, and we were twisting through sharp turns and these near vertical drops that made my stomach flip. Casey was laughing at first like she was having fun, but I noticed her grip on the safety bar got tighter the longer the ride went on. Then came the moment I'll never forget. We were going through this narrow tunnel covered in these flickering red lights, and out of nowhere, this fake spider dropped from the ceiling right in front of us. Casey screamed loud, not in a joking way, but a real terrified scream. The car shook from the sudden jerk, and she froze for a second. Then I noticed this weird smell like wet fabric mixed with something sour, and I looked over and saw it. She had peed herself, like right there in the sea. I didn't know how to react. It was weird and honestly kind of gross, but also made me feel super awkward because she looked so embarrassed and weirdly vulnerable. She didn't say anything, just stared straight ahead, her face kind of pale and shaking. The ride kept going, but the vibe totally shifted. No more laughing, no more joking, just this silent, awkward tension. After it ended, we stumbled off the ride, and I could tell she was trying to keep it together. The seat she was in was soaked, and the staff near the exit looked at us like something was off, but no one said a word. Casey tried to make a joke to lighten the mood, but it didn't land, and I just felt bad. We walked away slowly, and I could tell she was fighting to not break down. I tried to distract her, pointing out the cheesy carnival games and some fried dough we could share. But the whole time, I was thinking about how this ride totally broke her. Like, I didn't expect something so dumb to mess with someone that much. We ended up sitting on a bench near this old carousel that was barely working. The lights flickered on and off, and the music was all off key, adding to the weird, haunted feeling. Casey finally looked at me and admitted that the roller coaster wasn't the problem. It was the whole vibe of the place, the tight spaces, the unexpected drops, and the spider prank that just pushed her over the edge. She told me she'd had a thing with anxiety, but never told anyone on a date, and this was the first time it hit her like that in front of someone. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, telling her it was okay. We spent the rest of the night wandering the park in silence mostly, just walking through the empty pathways under flickering lights and the occasional creak of old rides shutting down for the day. The weird part was that the park felt almost alive after dark, not like a fun place, but more like it was watching us. There were no other visitors left, and the staff were already locking up around us, but the shadows between the rides stretched long and menacing. At one point, Casey stopped near a broken-down ticket booth and looked at me dead serious. She said she never wanted to come back here again, and honestly, I was starting to agree. That night wasn't just about a girl freaking out. It felt like something about the place made everything worse, like it preyed on the smallest weaknesses and turned them into this heavy, suffocating thing. We left before the park was fully closed, taking the long way out past rows of dead rides and empty stalls. When I dropped Casey off, she was quiet, but I could tell the night had stuck with her hard. We didn't text much after that. I guess it was one of those dates you remember not for how great it was, but for how strange and uncomfortable it got in a way you don't expect. Looking back, it's crazy how a night that was supposed to be fun turned into something almost creepy just because of a roller coaster and a moment no one saw coming. I still wonder if Casey ever went back to that park or if she's trying to forget the whole thing. Me, I'm not touching that place again. Gary seemed normal enough at first. His profile wasn't loaded with selfies or gym pics or anything obnoxious, just a couple of casual shots with friends, a goofy smile, and some jokes in his bio that made me laugh. We talked for a bit, mostly casual stuff, and he suggested we meet at this cool little bar downtown. It wasn't one of those crowded hipster places, more like a chill spot with low lighting, old wooden tables, and some random vintage decor scattered around. The kind of place where you could actually hear yourself think, not just a loud club blasting music. I showed up kind of early because I wanted to make a good first impression. Gary was there waiting near the bar, looking like a regular dude, jeans, a hoodie, sneakers. Nothing weird. We said hi and I figured it would just kind of be a simple night. Maybe some drinks, a few laughs, and if things went well, maybe a second date. But man, that was the start of the nightmare. Right after I sat down, Gary said something about introducing me to some friends. At first, I thought, okay, maybe just a couple of people, no big deal. But then, one by one, this whole crew of his guy friends showed up, like 5 or 6 of them. They didn't just say hi. They plopped down around the table like it was some kind of entertainment or something. There was this weird energy, like they were sizing me up from the second they walked in. And that's when it started to get really uncomfortable. I wasn't prepared for what came next. Gary's friends began whispering, barely trying to hide it, and I could catch bits of what they were saying. They were rating me out loud, but just quiet enough that they thought I wouldn't hear. They talked about how I looked my outfit, how I smiled, the way I sipped my drink. It felt like being watched through a magnifying glass, every little detail picked apart and judged. Gary didn't say anything at first. He just sat back and smirked like this was normal or something he was proud of. It was like it was on display, some kind of weird test or contest they were holding between themselves. One guy even pulled out his phone and started jotting down notes, which was beyond creepy. The whole vibe of the bar shifted for me in that moment. The low lights that had felt cozy before now seemed harsh and accusing. The background music became this annoying buzz I couldn't escape. I tried to keep my cool, smiling politely, hoping Gary would realize how messed up this was and shut it down, but nope. The guys kept going, comparing my personality to theirs, making weird comments about how funny or boring I seemed while they grilled me with questions designed to trip me up. At one point, one of them leaned over and said something so out of line that I almost stood up and walked out. I held myself back because I didn't want to cause a scene, but inside, I was burning with embarrassment and anger. They treated me like some kind of object, like my feelings or comfort didn't matter at all. I looked at Gary, hoping for a reaction, but he was just laughing along, acting like I was the punchline to a joke I wasn't in on. I tried to change the subject, steer the conversation back to something normal, but it was like they were a pack, feeding off each other's nastiness. They made fun of how I talked to my job, even the music I liked. It was exhausting and humiliating. The worst part was that Gary's friends seemed to think this was funny. Every time I tried to excuse myself to the bathroom or get some air, one of them would make some comment about how I was too sensitive or not cool enough for their squad. The bar itself wasn't much help. The bartender kept giving me these looks like maybe I should leave or call someone. I felt trapped in this tiny space with a group of guys who were supposed to be interested in me but were treating me like a game. I kept checking my phone under the table, hoping someone would text me or that I could fake an emergency and bail, but the battery was low and I was alone. Hours passed, or at least it felt that way. I remember staring at the door, hoping to see an excuse to get out, but every time I looked, it just laughed and made jokes at my expense. The worst part, Harry never once apologized or tried to shut it down. Instead, he joined in, rating me like I was some kind of checklist. By the end of the night, I was drained and deflated. The whole thing felt surreal, like a bad dream. When I finally got up to leave, Gary acted like everything was normal, like he hadn't just treated me like a freak show. I didn't say goodbye to his friends and just walked out into the cool night air, feeling like I needed to disappear. The street outside was quiet, and I took a deep breath, realizing how lucky I was to get out without losing it completely. I deleted Gary's number the next day and never looked back. I still get a weird feeling whenever I pass that bar, like it's the place where I was put on display and humiliated by people who were supposed to be decent human beings. Not a ghost or monster, but honestly, that night was just as disturbing in its own way. It's wild how people can act when they think no one's watching or when they're in a group. The whole thing left a mark on me, a reminder that not all dates are just awkward or funny. Sometimes they're downright creepy. It all started pretty normal, actually. I matched with Sheila on Tinder, and at first, she seemed cool. Funny texts, a little quirky, really into those indie movies I like. We met up a couple times, grabbed coffee, went for a walk in this little park nearby. Nothing intense, just chill. I thought maybe it could turn into something, but honestly, I was just looking for something casual. Sheila, though, she acted like we were already way closer than we were. After the second date, things got weird. Sheila started showing up at my place unannounced. Like literally just walking up to my front door whenever she felt like it. The first time I wasn't home, but she had left a note on my doorstep. I figured maybe she wanted to surprise me or something, so I didn't think much of it. The next time I was home, she just showed up again, ringing the doorbell nonstop. It felt kind of intrusive, but I wasn't sure how to say anything without sounding harsh. That was the start of it. Sheila began popping up almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day. At first, she'd come with coffee or some random snack, trying to be sweet or thoughtful, but it quickly turned into this weird obsession. I wasn't even sure if she lived nearby or if she was just stalking me. She never asked to come in or made a real plan to hang out. She just stood at my door waiting for me to answer. I started to avoid her calls and texts, hoping she'd get the hint, but nope. One day, I didn't answer the door at all. I was tired, not feeling great, and just wanted to be alone. But Sheila kept knocking, ringing the bell, shouting my name from the porch. When I still didn't respond, she pulled out her phone and called the police. The cops showed up about 10 minutes later, and honestly, I was more freaked out than when Sheila was there. They knocked on my door and told me someone had reported me missing or that I might be in danger. I had to explain to them that I was fine, just didn't want to answer the door, but they looked at me like I was making things up. Meanwhile, Sheila was outside, trying to convince them something was seriously wrong with me. It was like some twisted version of a bad joke. After that, the cops left, but the whole situation got worse. Sheila didn't back off. If anything, she seemed more determined. She kept showing up, but now she'd bring these little gifts. Flowers, handwritten letters, some random trinkets she'd found that she thought I'd like. It got to the point where I was scared to open my door because I never knew what she'd bring next or what mood she'd be in. One day, I came home to find all the locks on my door had been tampered with. Nothing was broken, but it was obvious someone had tried to mess with them. I freaked out and changed the locks immediately, but Sheila just showed up the next day with a new key. I have no idea where she got it, but it was just sitting on my doorstep like some kind of message. The neighborhood started noticing too. My neighbors told me they'd seen Sheila hanging around, watching my place, sometimes talking to the mailman or the delivery guy to get info about me. The whole thing was a nightmare. I stopped inviting friends over because I didn't want anyone getting caught in the middle. I tried blocking her everywhere. Phone, social media, but she somehow always found a way to reach out. The worst was the nights when I'd hear her footsteps outside my window or see a shadow standing just beyond the porch light. I never called the cops again because I felt like they wouldn't take me seriously. And honestly, I didn't want to escalate things. It was like living in this weird bubble of tension, never knowing when Sheila would appear next. One afternoon, I was sitting inside, minding my own business, when Sheila just walked into my backyard. No knocking, no calling. Just walked right through the gate and stood there watching me. I froze. She didn't say anything, just smiled this strange, unreadable smile and held out a small box. I didn't open it. I told her she needed to leave, and she finally did, but that moment stuck with me. It felt like she'd crossed some invisible line that I wasn't sure she'd ever come back from. Eventually, I moved out of that place. I couldn't deal with the constant stress and fear. Sheila never stopped trying to find me, but at least I wasn't trapped in my own home anymore. Looking back, I don't even know why she got like that or what she thought she was doing. I didn't hurt her, didn't lead her on, and yet she acted like she owned me or something. Honestly, it was just pure nightmare fuel living through it. Someone who seemed normal at first turning into this person who invaded every part of my life without permission, who didn't respect boundaries at all. It's not like the stuff you see in movies where everything is clear cut. It just slowly twisted into this suffocating thing that made me scared of my own front door. So I matched with this guy Wesley on Tinder. From the jump, he seemed pretty chill, nothing too flashy, just your average dude with a laid back vibe. His photos weren't all over the place, just some casual shots of him hanging out, maybe with a dog or something, and his messages. Kinda goofy in a way that made me smile. Not super slick or anything, just real. We decided to meet up at this little artsy cafe downtown. Not your usual loud bar or anything, but this cozy spot with big windows, a wall full of old concert posters, and soft jazz playing in the background. It felt like the perfect place to actually talk without screaming over music or drunk conversations. When I got there, Wesley was already sitting at this corner table where the sunlight hit just right. He looked exactly like his pictures, scruffy but in a good way, wearing a hoodie and some worn out sneakers. I was thinking maybe this was gonna be a chill night. We ordered coffee, and for the first little while, it was pretty easygoing. We talked about dumb stuff, movies we liked, bands we both had seen live, and a few jokes that actually landed. It felt nice, just two people hanging out without any weird vibes. But then something started to shift. I noticed he kept looking around the cafe, but not like casually glancing or checking the place out. No, it was way more intense. Every time a woman walked in, he would turn his entire head and stare at her like he was sizing her up or something. Sometimes he'd keep looking even after she passed by. And it wasn't just once or twice. It kept happening over and over. I tried to brush it off at first, thinking maybe he was distracted or something was on his mind, but it kept happening so much it was impossible to ignore. The mood between us totally changed. I felt like I was invisible most of the time. He'd laugh when I cracked a joke, but the second someone walked by or the waitress came to our table, he'd look past me like I wasn't even there. It was like I was competing with everyone else in the room for his attention, and honestly, that sucked. That sinking feeling of being second best was hitting me hard. Eventually, I couldn't keep quiet about it. I asked him straight up why he kept checking out other women like that. Honestly, I expected some lame excuse or an awkward laugh, but what he said next knocked me off my feet. He just looked at me dead serious and said there were prettier women around. No sugarcoating it, no softening the blow. He basically told me I wasn't the most attractive person in the room. That hit harder than I thought it would, like someone slapped me right across the face, and suddenly the whole cafe felt way too small and way too loud. I wasn't prepared for that kind of brutal honesty. I gotta admit, I kinda lost it. Before I even thought, I grabbed my glass of water and threw it right in his face. Yeah, I know, a wild move. But at that moment, it felt like the only way to show him how disrespectful that was. The whole place went silent for a second, everyone staring at us, jaws dropped. Wesley just sat there, soaked. Instead of getting mad or yelling back, he started crying, like full-on tears streaming down his cheeks. That was the weirdest part. Here I was, furious and humiliated, and he's sitting there bawling like a kid who just got caught sneaking cookies. I had no idea what to do. It was like all the roles flipped, and suddenly I felt bad even though he was the one who said something so nasty. People were watching us. The waitress looked super uncomfortable, and that soft jazz music felt like some sad soundtrack to the whole mess. Wesley grabbed a napkin and wiped his face, still sniffling, and mentioned something about being sensitive, like he was hurt more than angry. Honestly, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. The whole date had turned into this confusing emotional mess I couldn't figure out or untangle. I wasn't sure if he was trying to guilt me or what, but it was messing with my head. Walking out, I kept replaying the night in my mind. The rude staring, the brutal comment, the water in his face, and then the tears. It didn't make sense how someone could be so disrespectful, but then flip and act like the victim. That whole emotional roller coaster felt creepy, like a weird movie I didn't want to be part of. I couldn't believe how fast the night went from chill and easy to tense and awkward. I never heard from Wesley again, which honestly might be for the best. But the whole thing stuck with me, not just because of the weird crying or me throwing water, but because of how messed up the dynamic was. It felt like he had no respect for me, but expected me to handle it gently. That night reminded me how some people can switch from being jerks to fragile in seconds, and somehow you're left feeling weird and off, trying to figure out what just happened. So yeah, that's my Tinder horror story. A date that started off chill and ended up being one of the most awkward, confusing nights I've had in a long time. Sometimes people surprise you in the worst ways, and you're left just hoping you don't run into anyone like that again. So I matched with this girl, Phoebe, on Tinder. Right from the start, she came off as super smart and responsible, which I thought was pretty cool. She was all about health and fitness, always posting stuff about clean eating, working out, and just this whole healthy lifestyle vibe. Not gonna lie, it made her stand out from the usual swipe crowd. We decided to meet at this small coffee shop downtown, the kind of place that's got exposed brick walls and some indie music playing low in the background. Real chill, not like some loud bar where you gotta yell to be heard. The vibe was perfect for actually talking and not just pretending to listen while looking at your phone. The first couple hours went pretty smooth. We talked about the usual stuff: favorite movies, music, dumb random things you bring up to keep the convo going without it feeling forced. Fo had this confidence about her that I liked, the kind where she didn't hesitate to say what she thought but wasn't rude about it. I figured this was gonna be an easy, chill date. But then, as the night rolled on, I started picking up on something kinda off. It was subtle at first, like she kept steering the conversation back to health and safety stuff, especially when it came to dating. At first, I was like, okay, that's a bit much, but whatever. Maybe she's just really into this clean living thing. But then it got way more intense, almost uncomfortable. Out of nowhere, she tells me she won't get physical unless I take an STD test first. And she wasn't joking or trying to be funny. She was dead serious, like this was a line in the sand. I mean, I get being careful, but it felt like she didn't trust me at all, even though we barely even knew each other. It was weird because the whole night was supposed to be casual and fun, but suddenly I'm sitting there thinking about medical tests and health certificates. It felt like we jumped from zero to a serious hospital visit real quick. Then she pulls out this little envelope from her bag, one of those at-home STD test kits you mail off yourself. She said if I wasn't down to take it right then and there, it wasn't going to work between us. So now here I am, in this coffee shop bathroom, sitting on a grimy toilet seat with this test kit in my hands, while Fui waits outside like some health inspector ready to give me a verdict. It was surreal, honestly. I'd never thought a first date would turn into something like this. After that, things got even stranger. Over the next couple days, Fui kept texting me nonstop, asking if I'd sent in the test sample, if I was feeling okay, and if I was absolutely sure I was clean. The constant messages started to mess with my head. I began overthinking every little thing about myself. Was I really clean? Did I forget something? What if the results came back wrong or she freaked out? It was exhausting. What should have been a normal dating thing turned into this high-pressure health check. When I finally got the results back clean as expected, I told her right away. She seemed relieved, but instead of chilling out, she started asking for all these details. When was my last test? How often did I get checked? How many partners had I had before? It felt less like a relationship and more like an intense interrogation. Like I was being grilled in a court instead of hanging out with someone I liked. After a while, it hit me that this wasn't just about being cautious. Phoebe wanted complete control over every little part of my life. She acted like she was protecting herself, but honestly, it felt like she was trapping me in this bubble of suspicion and rules I didn't sign up for. Keeping up with her questions and demands was draining. It wasn't fun anymore. It was like being on this exhausting treadmill that I couldn't step off. One night, things went from weird to downright creepy. Fu showed up at my apartment unannounced, holding this massive binder stuffed with printouts of medical articles, test results, and research she'd been obsessing over. She said she wanted to make sure we were on the same page health-wise. The whole situation felt like I was being audited or that I was part of some medical experiment instead of dating someone. I was getting majorly uncomfortable. I tried to tell her I needed some space, but she just got upset and said if I cared about her, I'd be willing to prove I was safe anytime she asked. It wasn't about trust anymore, it was about control and constant proving. It felt like no matter what I did, it would never be enough. Eventually, I blocked her after she sent me this super long message about how she couldn't date someone who wasn't 100% transparent and clean all the time. It felt like a total relief, but also a weird kind of loss. Looking back, the whole thing felt like I was trapped in a twisted game where only she was playing by the rules and I was stuck guessing what she wanted next. It wasn't about getting to know each other or having a good time anymore. It was this whole other level of intense I wasn't ready for, or honestly, just didn't want to deal with. The date that started off chill ended up being one of the most draining and unsettling experiences I've had in a while. So yeah, that's the story of food and the weird health obsession that turned a simple coffee date into something way too complicated and uncomfortable. Sometimes people take things so far it stops being about connection and just becomes about control, and that's when you gotta know when to walk away. It all started pretty normal. I matched with Sheldon on Tinder, and honestly, he was everything I'd been hoping for: funny, charming, and he actually seemed interested in me, not just the usual surface stuff. His messages were different from the get go, not those boring hey or what's up lines, but little jokes, questions about my day, and stuff that showed he was paying attention. We hit it off right away and ended up going on a few dates that were seriously amazing. I'm talking late night talks where we'd sit on his tiny balcony, smoking and staring at the city lights, walks through quiet streets with no one else around, sharing little secrets, kind of amazing. He had this way of making me feel seen, like he actually cared about what I thought and felt. Sheldon's apartment was this cozy little place on the third floor of an old brick building downtown. It had this warm vibe: plants hanging from the windows, stacks of books everywhere, and a cluttered desk by the window with papers and notes strewn about like someone was always working on something interesting. It wasn't fancy, but it felt lived in and real, the kind of space someone who cared about life would have. We hang out there sometimes, cook dinner together, which was mostly me cooking while he made jokes and messed up the kitchen, or just chill watching movies on his beat up couch. Things felt real, like maybe I'd finally found someone worth trusting, someone who wasn't just passing through. After a few weeks, I was pretty much hooked. I wasn't just into him, I was falling hard. It felt like things were moving fast, but in a good way. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him. I kept telling myself to stay cool, but honestly, I was daydreaming about us a lot. I even started picturing what it'd be like to have a future with him, going on trips, meeting his friends, maybe even moving in together someday. It sounds crazy, but when someone makes you feel that special, you don't question it much. Then one day, I decided to surprise him. I wanted to drop by his apartment after work with some takeout and maybe watch a movie or just hang out. I had this goofy smile on my face, feeling excited to see him and maybe cook together, even though it was just takeout. I got to the building, buzzed his apartment, and waited for him to let me in. Nothing. I buzzed again. Still nothing. I thought maybe he was in the shower or just didn't hear me, so I waited downstairs for a bit, texting him, but he wasn't replying. After a while, I started getting that gnawing feeling in my gut. Something wasn't right. I figured maybe he was busy or maybe his phone died, so I decided to head upstairs and try the door myself. When I pushed it open, my heart sank. The door was unlocked. I expected to hear him say something, or at least see his shoes by the door, but the apartment was completely empty. And I mean empty like a ghost town. No furniture, no books, no plants. Nothing that could even tell me someone lived there. The walls were bare, the floors creaked with this weird hollow sound every time I stepped. It was like the whole place had been wiped clean, like he never existed there at all. I kept looking for anything. A picture, a note, some sign he'd been there, but there was absolutely nothing. My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. I felt like I was going to throw up. I sat down on the cold floor, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Then I checked my phone and tried calling him again. No answer. Panic was setting in hard now. My mind was racing with every possible explanation, none of which made sense. Where had he gone? Why leave everything behind? I started digging online, using everything I knew about him: his full name, his phone number, the little details he'd shared about work or school. Nothing matched up. It was like Sheldon was a ghost, a perfect lie crafted just for a few weeks. Then, after some serious searching, I found out the worst part. Sheldon wasn't even his real name. There was this other guy who looked exactly like him, but had a completely different name. Married with kids, living in a different part of the city. I found pictures of a wedding, family photos, social media profiles that were surprisingly public for something so serious. The whole thing hit me like a punch to the gut. The guy I thought I was falling for was living a double life. For days, I kept going back to that empty apartment, standing there wondering how he managed to switch between these two lives without anyone noticing. How could someone be so charming and real one minute and then vanish without a trace? The whole idea of it messed with my head. Was anything he said to me even true? Was I just a game to him? What hurt the most wasn't just that he lied. It was how completely he erased every trace of the life he had with me, like it was just some side story he could delete, like I never mattered at all. It made me feel invisible and used, but also scared. If he could lie about everything that easily, what else was fake? I told a few close friends, and they helped me figure out what to do next, but honestly, I just wanted to forget the whole thing. That part of my life felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Sometimes I still wonder if I imagined the whole thing, but then I remember that empty apartment and the photos of his other life. It's burned into my brain, a reminder that sometimes people you trust can be complete strangers hiding behind perfect masks. I matched with him on Tinder. His name was Ryan. At first, it was honestly kind of perfect. He was funny, easy to talk to, didn't give off any weird vibes. We started texting pretty much nonstop right away, like that type of texting where you wake up and there's already a good morning text waiting, and you kind of start thinking, maybe this one's different. We met up for coffee a couple days later, and it was the same in person. He was cute in that kind of normal guy way, like not a model or anything but super charming. We talked for hours about random stuff like movies we loved, weird childhood stories, and places we wanted to travel. I left that date actually smiling like an idiot. The next few weeks were kind of a blur. We were hanging out all the time, little dates, movie nights at his place, late night drives just listening to music and talking. It felt like one of those movie montages where everything clicks and you're kind of floating through it. I wasn't overthinking anything, just enjoying it. He lived alone in this apartment that was actually kind of nice. Small but cozy, with some plants in the window and shelves full of books and old vinyl records. It looked like a place someone who's got their life together would have. I started staying over sometimes, and it felt really natural, like we were falling into some easy rhythm together. But one night, everything started to get off. We were just hanging out at his place like usual, and he left his phone on the coffee table while he went to grab us some snacks from the kitchen. I don't even know why I picked it up. I wasn't snooping, I swear. Maybe I was just bored, but my eyes landed on this contact saved under some girl's name. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. And when I did, my stomach immediately dropped. The texts were weird. They weren't like flirty messages or even friendly ones. They were angry, like full-on arguments, threats, back and forth. Stuff like stay out of my life and you don't know what you're doing. It didn't make sense. When he came back, I straight up asked him who she was. I figured honesty was better than sitting there silently freaking out. He barely flinched, like he had his answer ready. Said it was his sister and they just had some family drama. His tone was super casual, like it was no big deal, just normal family stuff. I tried to play it cool, like I believed him, but something about it didn't sit right with me. After that night, I couldn't unsee those messages. I kept noticing little things, like how his phone was always flipped face down, or how he'd get these random calls and step out of the room to answer them. Every time his phone buzzed, I felt this weird tension, like there was something happening that I wasn't supposed to know about. A few nights later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it. When I finally did, it was her, the sister, or at least that's what she said. Her voice was sharp, like she was pissed. She didn't waste any time, just told me flat out that I needed to stay away from Ryan. She said he wasn't who I thought he was, that he had a dark side, and that people had gotten hurt before because they didn't listen. It completely freaked me out. My hands were shaking when I hung up. I couldn't tell if she was being overdramatic or if I was suddenly in the middle of something way bigger than I realized. I confronted him about the call the next time I saw him. His reaction scared me more than the call itself. He went completely cold, like flipping a switch. His whole vibe changed. He got defensive, said she was crazy, unstable, making things up to ruin his life. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the way he got so intense made it worse, like he was trying to control the narrative so hard that it felt like he was hiding something. That night, I started seriously doubting everything. Every sweet text, every compliment, every moment we shared. Was any of it even real? A couple days later, I couldn't stop myself. While he was in the shower, I grabbed his phone again. I know, not my proudest moment, but I needed answers. I went through the text with her, and it was so much worse than I thought. There were threats, not just arguments. Stuff about money, restraining orders, and saying she needed to keep her mouth shut. It wasn't family drama. It was something way darker. I texted her myself, asking for the truth. She sent me back this massive wall of texts explaining everything. How be a history of controlling women, isolating them, getting violent when they tried to leave. She said she was his half-sister and had tried to warn his previous girlfriends, but most of them didn't believe her until it was too late. She'd been trying to stop him for years. I felt sick, like actual nausea, sitting there in his apartment while he was just in the other room. I was scared, not even knowing how to act normal when he came out of the shower. I made up some excuse about feeling sick and left that night. My mind was racing the entire drive home. After that, I'd coasted in completely. Blocked his number, his socials, everything. But it didn't end there. He showed up outside my apartment a couple times. Said he just wanted to talk, acted like nothing was wrong, like I was overreacting. But there was this vibe under his voice that scared the life out of me, like if I let him in, I wouldn't be able to get rid of him. I told a couple of close friends everything, and they helped me figure out how to stay safe. Eventually, he stopped showing up, but I still get anxious whenever I see a car that looks like his or hear a knock at my door. What messes with me the most isn't just how close I got to something dangerous. It's how easy it was to fall into. How normal he seemed at first, how charming, like he knew exactly how to play it to reel me in. I still think about it sometimes, how I almost didn't pick up his phone that night. If I hadn't, I probably never would have known until it was too late. I matched with Tommy on Tinder during this weird phase where I told myself I should be more open to meeting different kinds of people. He seemed nice in his messages. His profile wasn't weird or creepy, just your average dude who liked hiking, cooking, and trying new restaurants. Pretty standard stuff. I thought, cool, at least he's not one of those guys who just wants to hook up or flex his gym selfies. We messaged back and forth for a few days and decided to meet up for lunch. Nothing fancy, just a small cafe that had outdoor seating. When I met him, he was actually pretty cute in person, kind of goofy but funny in a way that made you feel comfortable. The first date went really well, so we kept seeing each other. After a couple weeks, he started coming over to my place sometimes. Now, important side note, I have a pet chicken named Nugget. Yeah, I know it's not super common, but she's basically my little buddy. I live a bit outside the city, got a small backyard where she roams around. Nugget's not just some random farm chicken either. She's super friendly, follows me around, and honestly acts more like a cat than a bird. Everyone who meets her loves her. The first time Tommy came over, I introduced him to Nugget. He laughed a little and said it was quirky, but didn't seem bothered by it. Actually, he had acted like he thought it was cool I had a pet chicken. I thought he was just trying to be polite, but whatever, I appreciated that he wasn't judging me for it. We hung out, watched some movies, and everything seemed fine. A couple visits later, I'd noticed Tommy started making these weird little comments about Nugget, like how chickens are really tasty or how weird it is to keep something you could technically eat as a pet. I kind of laughed it off at first because I figured he was just joking. You know how some people say dumb stuff just to get a reaction? But then he started saying it more often, like every time he saw her. He even started asking weird questions like if I'd ever tried chicken that fresh or how I even managed to bond with something most people eat for dinner. It was starting to get under my skin a bit, but I still tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I figured he just didn't get it because not everyone understands the whole pet chicken thing. Then one weekend, Tommy offered to make dinner for me at my house. He said he wanted to surprise me, cook something special. I thought it was sweet that he wanted to do something nice, so I let him use my kitchen while I was out running errands. I didn't even think twice about it. He said he brought his own ingredients and everything. When I came back, dinner was already on the table. It looked really good, smelled amazing. He made some kind of fancy roasted chicken with vegetables and homemade bread. I complimented him on how good it looked, but as I sat down and took the first bite, something felt off. I couldn't explain it right away. The chicken tasted weirdly familiar, but not in a good way. That's when I noticed Nugget wasn't around. Usually she'd be right near the back door or following me into the kitchen like always. I called for her, but she didn't come. I figured maybe she was in the yard or the coop. Tommy kind of brushed it off, saying maybe she was just resting or hiding somewhere. But the pit in my stomach was growing fast. After dinner, I went outside to check the coop. Nugget was gone. Not like wandered off gone. The coop door was wide open. My backyard's fenced in. She never leaves on her own. My mind immediately jumped to the worst thought, but I was hoping I was wrong. I came back inside and asked Tommy again where Nugget was. That's when he gave me this creepy little smirk and said something that made me want to throw up. He casually said that it was kind of poetic in a way. Farm to table, fresh as it gets. My head was spinning trying to process what he was saying. He actually killed and cooked my pet chicken for dinner. My Nugget. The one I raised from a baby chick. I completely lost it. My hands were shaking, my chest tight. I couldn't even find the words. He kept trying to play it off like it wasn't a big deal, saying things like people eat chickens every day, and it was better than store-bought. Like that somehow made it okay. I told him to leave immediately. He actually looked surprised that I was that upset. After he left, I sat on my kitchen floor for what felt like hours, trying to stop my brain from spiraling. I felt sick knowing I had eaten my own pet, and even worse knowing that someone I trusted thought it was perfectly fine to do that without even asking me. It wasn't some misunderstanding. He planned it. I ended up blocking him on everything. Changed my locks too, because honestly, if someone can do that without feeling any kind of guilt, who knows what else they're capable of. For weeks after, I kept having this horrible, heavy feeling in my chest every time I walked into my backyard and saw that empty coop. So I matched with Shayla on Tinder one night when I was half watching some movie and swiping without thinking too hard. She popped up, had a cute smile, seemed pretty chill in her bio. We started messaging and it was easy. She was funny and quick with the jokes, made me laugh a few times, and honestly, after talking to so many dry or weird people on the app, she felt like a breath of fresh air. We talked for a couple days and then set up a time to meet. We picked this little coffee shop that wasn't too crowded. When she showed up, she looked even better in person, and she had this energy about her that made it feel like we'd known each other longer than just a few days of texting. We talked for hours that first time, bouncing from topic to topic like we were vibing on everything. She said she loved traveling, weird indie horror movies, and collecting random stuff like vintage salt shakers. Kinda odd, but quirky in a harmless way, or so I thought. After that, we hung out a few more times. She'd come over, watch movies at my place, order takeout, and things seemed pretty normal. Nothing stood out like a giant red flag, but looking back, there were a few moments where she'd be real curious about my apartment. She'd ask random questions about where I kept stuff, peek in drawers, make weird little jokes about me having too much cash lying around. I'd laugh it off, thinking she was just being playful. One night she stayed over. We were chilling, having a few drinks, and she fell asleep on the couch while we were watching some random Netflix series. I got up, locked the door, turned everything off, and went to bed. In the morning, she left kinda early, said she had to meet a friend for brunch. No big deal. About an hour after she left, I realized my wallet wasn't on the counter where I always keep it. I figured maybe I tossed it somewhere else or left it in my jacket, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Still not thinking the worst, I figured I misplaced it or something. I tore the place apart for hours before finally realizing it was just gone. That's when my stomach started dropping. I texted her, trying not to sound accusatory, just asking if maybe she'd seen it or accidentally grabbed it while picking up her stuff. She responded super fast saying no, she hadn't seen it, and even joked that I should check under my couch cushions. Something about the way she answered felt off, but I didn't push it right away. Later that day, my phone buzzed with a fraud alert from my bank. That's when the real panic set in. Someone was trying to use my card at a pet store in a part of town I never go to. I quickly froze the card and called the bank to figure out what was going on. While I was on the phone with them, more charges started popping up. A weird online order for a giant stuffed sloth, another charge at some sketchy vague shop, and a delivery service for like $50 worth of bubble tea. The purchases weren't big, but they were strange as hell. I mean, who buys a 4-foot-tall stuffed animal and 5 different bubble teas in one day? The pattern was so bizarre it made it even creepier. My brain kept trying to deny what was becoming more obvious by the minute, but deep down I already knew who was behind it. I called the cops and filed a report, but honestly, unless you catch someone in the act, it's not like they do much. The officer basically told me it was probably someone close to me and that I should be careful who I trust. No kidding. That night, I did some digging on my own. I pulled up Shayla's Instagram, and sure enough, she had posted a story of herself that morning holding one of those giant bubble teas. Same brand, same time as the charge on my card. In the background, I could literally see the stuffed sloth sitting on her couch like it was some prize she won in a carnival. It felt like a punch to the face. She didn't even bother hiding it. She straight up stole my wallet, went on a tiny spending spree, and then acted like nothing happened. The more I scrolled through her feed, the more I noticed other weird stuff. Designer shoes, expensive skincare, electronics, all things I knew she probably couldn't afford just casually. I blocked her on everything immediately, but part of me wanted to confront her so bad. Like, how can someone you barely know pull this off and act so casual about it? I was pissed, embarrassed, and honestly creeped out that someone could sit in my apartment one night, smile at me, and then rob me while I slept in the next room. For weeks after, I kept checking my accounts, terrified she somehow still had my info. I even caught myself checking outside my apartment windows sometimes, half expecting her to randomly show up with another one of her creepy purchases. Luckily, I got my bank to reverse most of the charges, but that doesn't make the whole thing any less messed up. I still remember how hyped I was when I matched with Hassan. It was one of those boring nights where you're just scrolling through Tinder, not really expecting much. But his profile actually stood out. He wasn't trying too hard, didn't have a bunch of weird gym selfies or fishing photos like half the guys. He had this relaxed vibe, nice smile, and his messages were funny without being cringy. For once, it felt like I was talking to a normal person. We texted for a few days, nothing heavy, just casual stuff. He was good at keeping the convo flowing, never made it awkward. He asked about my job, my hobbies, even my dog. We seemed to click pretty well, so when he suggested we meet up for coffee, I was like, yeah, why not? I was actually kind of excited because I hadn't been on a decent date in forever. We picked this little coffee shop that was halfway between both of us. It was one of those cozy ones with plants everywhere and random mismatched chairs. When I walked in, he was already sitting at a corner table. He stood up when he saw me and gave me a quick hug. First impression, he looked like his pictures, so that was a relief. No weird catfish stuff. The first half of the date was actually pretty good. We talked about shows we liked, music, travel, all the basic stuff. But then, somewhere around the second cup of coffee, the vibe started to shift a little. He got more, I don't want to blunt, like his filter just kind of disappeared. He started asking me about my workout routine. At first, I didn't think much of it. I told him I go for walks, do some yoga here and there, but I'm not one of those hardcore gym people. His face kind of twisted when I said that, but he didn't say anything right away. Then, out of nowhere, he drops it. He straight up tells me that I should really consider going to the gym more because, according to him, I look so much better if I lost a few pounds. My brain kind of froze for a second because I didn't even know how to react. I mean, we were literally in the middle of our first date, and this dude was already criticizing my body like it was some casual small talk topic. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was a weird attempt at a joke or whatever, but he kept going. He started pointing out things like how my face was pretty but my body didn't match it, how I had potential if I just worked harder on myself. The words just kept coming like he didn't even realize how messed up it sounded. I sat there feeling my face heat up, but not in a good way. It was like I could feel every person in the cafe suddenly looking at me, even though they probably weren't. My stomach twisted, and I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow me. This guy, who I barely knew, was tearing me apart like it was his right. He wasn't yelling or anything, which somehow made it even worse. He was calm, matter of fact, like he was doing me some kind of favor by pointing out all my flaws. He even started talking about what kind of workouts I should do, what diet I should follow, and how to attract way better guys if I just put in the effort. At that point, I couldn't even drink my coffee anymore. My hands were cold and shaky, and my heart was pounding, but I didn't want to cause a scene. I just sat there nodding, barely saying anything, trying to mentally count down until I could leave without making it weird. Finally, I told him I needed to head home because I had work early the next morning. He smiled like nothing had even happened, like we just had a nice normal conversation. He offered to walk me to my car, but I shut that down fast. Once I got in my car and closed the door, I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. My head was spinning. I don't even know how long I sat in that parking lot before I finally drove off. The whole way home, His words kept replaying in my head like a broken record. Over the next few days, he kept texting me like everything was fine, sending memes, asking when we could hang out again, like he seriously thought the date went great. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt sick. I couldn't believe how completely detached from reality he seemed. I didn't respond to any of his texts, but he didn't get the hint. He kept messaging for days. Eventually, I blocked him everywhere. Tinder, phone, Instagram. Even after that, he made a couple fake numbers to text me from. One of them literally said, "I was just being honest. You should appreciate that someone cares enough to tell you." That's when it really hit me how messed up his head was. For weeks after, I kept randomly thinking about that date, even when I didn't want to. His words got stuck in my head like gum you can't scrape off your shoe. Every time I looked in the mirror, a little voice would whisper all the garbage he said. I started second-guessing everything. My clothes, my face, my body. Like one stupid day could undo years of trying to feel confident in myself. It took a while for that voice to quiet down. Not because I forgot about him, but because I finally got mad instead of sad. Mad that some random bad thought he had the right to make me feel like trash because I didn't fit his twisted little checklist. You know how people always say, don't trust anyone you meet on Tinder? Yeah, I've always thought that was just bitter people who had bad luck. But after what happened with Lisa, I get it now. And honestly, I wish I never downloaded that stupid app. It started like every other match. I was bored one night, sitting in my apartment after work, swiping with no real expectations. Then Lisa popped up. She was cute, had this big smile, long dark hair, and these kind of wild but pretty eyes that made her stand out. Her bio said she loved dogs, true crime podcasts, and sushi. Nothing weird. She messaged me first, which was kind of refreshing, and we started talking. At first, it was good, like really good. We clicked fast. She was funny, always had something interesting to say, and wasn't one of those people who took 3 hours to reply to a text. Within a week, we set up a date. We went to this little Mexican place near my apartment. She looked even better in person, super confident, lots of energy. The date went smooth. We laughed a lot, and honestly, I walked away thinking I actually found someone decent for once. The next few weeks were a blur. We hung out constantly. She'd come over, we'd order food, binge shows, go out on weekends. She had met some of my friends. Everything moved fast, but it felt natural at the time. I wasn't thinking too hard about it. She was fun, easy to talk to, and honestly, she made me feel good about myself. But there were little things, stuff that didn't seem like a big deal at first, but now sticks out like a warning sign I ignored. She was super into taking pictures, like all the time. Us at dinner, us on the couch, random selfies of us half asleep, and she always wanted me to send her pictures too. She'd ask for them when we weren't together, sometimes late at night, and I'd send them. I didn't think much of it. Everyone does that these days, right? She was also weirdly possessive. If I didn't text back right away, she'd double text, triple text. If I mentioned hanging out with my guy friends, she'd ask who was there, if any girls were around. She'd make these little comments about how she didn't want me talking to any of my exes, even though I wasn't. At the time, I kind of thought it was just for being into me. Like, I figured it meant she cared. Yeah, I was dumb. After about 2 months, things started feeling heavy. Like, too much. She was always around, always texting, always calling. I started feeling like I couldn't breathe. If I didn't answer her call, she'd leave these long voice messages, getting upset, saying she was worried about us. My friends started noticing too. One of my buddies flat out told me she was toxic, but I kept brushing it off. Then one night, we got into a small argument over something stupid. She didn't like that I had plans without her. Nothing crazy, just a poker night with my friends. She flipped out and started accusing me of not caring about her, of keeping secrets, of not being serious. That's when I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I needed out. Breaking up with her was brutal, she cried. They'd tried to guilt me into staying. She said she couldn't live without me, that I was throwing everything away. But I stayed firm. I told her we needed space, and I blocked her number after that because she wouldn't stop calling. I thought that was it. I thought it was over. But that's where it actually started. About a week later, one of my friends texted me a screenshot. Lisa had posted a picture of me on one of those throwaway Instagram accounts she made. Not just a normal picture either. It was one of the private ones I sent her. The kind you don't ever expect anyone to share. She captioned it with some nasty stuff, calling me a liar, a cheater, saying I used her and dumped her. At first, I couldn't even believe it. My stomach dropped. I felt sick. It was like my brain couldn't even process what I was seeing. Then more texts came in, more screenshots. She was tagging my friends, messaging random people who followed me, trying to embarrass me. She even made a few TikToks using old videos of us together, making up lies about me being some horrible person. I panicked. I tried to report the pages, but she kept making new ones. My DMs were full of people I didn't even know asking me what happened. A couple coworkers even saw the posts. It was a nightmare. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest would tighten. She wasn't stopping. She would post one thing, I'd report it, and a new account would pop up an hour later. I tried reaching out to her one last time, thinking maybe I could talk her down. But she didn't want to talk. She wanted to destroy me. She even threatened to send stuff to my family if I didn't apologize and make things right. Eventually, I had to go to the cops. I filed a report for harassment and stalking. They took it seriously because of the nature of the stuff she was posting. The officer said this kind of thing happens more than you'd think. They got a no contact order against her, but honestly, the damage was already done. Even after that, I kept waiting for her to pop back up. For months, I was scared to even open my apps. I deleted Tinder, Instagram, everything for a while. I couldn't deal with it. My reputation took a hit, even though people who knew me knew it wasn't true. But you can't control how fast rumors spread online. Looking back, I still feel stupid for not seeing the signs sooner. The constant pictures, the obsessive behavior, the weird possessiveness. I ignored it all because I was caught up in the attention. She seemed so perfect at first, but she was hiding this darker, crazier side the whole time.